Once the switch is found and the light is turned on, it no longer matters how dark it had been or what the molecules of darkness were made of or from where the darkness had come. What matters is that now there is light. That's a passage from Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati's new book, From Hollywood to the Himalayas, a journey of healing and transformation. Welcome to Letting Go and the Greatest Secret, where we explore the end of your suffering and the beginning of lasting happiness. I'm Hale Dwoskin, and today we'll be talking with teacher and author Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati. Sadhvi is a renowned spiritual leader in India. She has lived on the banks of the Ganga River in the lap of the Himalayas at Paramath Nikanatan Ashram for 25 years, where she gives spiritual discourses and questions and answer sessions, teaches meditation, and oversees numerous charitable and humanitarian programs.
It's such a wonderful, wonderful joy to be with you. Really a beautiful blessing.
Yes, thank you. The feeling is quite mutual. So, in your experience, actually, tell me just a little bit about your background and how you came to this work and this understanding that you're sharing with the world.
So it's a background with a lot of interesting plot, and I'll give you just a couple threads of that.
Great.
But really the story in terms of how it all happened is a story of grace, because the plot does not really lead to where I am today. And the only way to account for that is grace.
Yes.
I grew up in Los Angeles in a very privileged, opportunity-filled, and wonderful environment. I had some challenges, of course, as we all have challenges at various stages of our development. And I certainly had my share of those as well, challenges, difficulties, traumas. But the upbringing was beautiful. I had everything that I needed. I had everything that we're told one needs to be happy. The access to wonderful education. I graduated from Stanford University. Lots of privilege, lots of items that one can buy and own. A healthy family. I mean, just I had all of those pieces. And yet, both with regard to earlier childhood difficulties, challenges, traumas, but also with regard to just that sense that we all speak about now, the 2020 of hindsight of, well, actually happiness is not in the degrees that you get and the items that you buy and the parties that you go to and the resorts you're able to vacation in. So with that 2020 of hindsight, it isn't any surprise that I wasn't deeply fulfilled, that I wasn't deeply happy, that there was something missing. However, I was not at that stage of my life even aware on any kind of conscious level to be looking for it. I was in the midst of a PhD program and was succeeding in that, was was really managing life in a lot of ways, managing manifestations from the challenges that I had experienced, managing academia, managing relationships, just life seemed like it was really on track in a lot of ways. But again, with that very, very small vision that doesn't account for actually what life can possibly really give you, and
Yes.
what real
Yeah.
happiness is, and what real peace is.
Yes.
And traveled to India with a backpack on a vacation. I was married. My husband very much wanted to go to India. He was on a spiritual quest. And I agreed to go because I was a strict vegetarian and had struggled through getting pure vegetarian food in languages I didn't speak in Europe, in South America, and agreed, well, okay, at least in India, they know what vegetarianism means.
That's true. They do very
And,
well.
and nicely, right? And nicely. It's not
Yeah.
steamed
Indian
carrot.
food is one of the epitomes.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I agreed to go in whatever degree to which I was able to be conscious of that which was guiding me and propelling me forward. My awareness was that I had agreed to go to make my husband happy, and because I could eat happily, because I loved Indian food, and no problem. And
Right.
we get to Delhi, and I opened a guidebook, 500-page Lonely Planet guidebook, and said Rishikesh. And when we get to Rishikesh, we put the bags in the hotel room, and I said, I'm going to put my feet in the river. I didn't know the river was holy. I was not going down looking for some spiritual experience with this mother goddess river. I was just hot and sweaty and tired, and we had to carry our bags across a footbridge. And yeah, I just wanted to freshen up.
Yes.
And I've always been a nature person. And so for me to wander onto the banks of a river was very, very normal and very natural. And so I walked down to the banks of Ganga and had such a powerful, powerful experience of opening, of awakening, of connection with divinity. I burst into tears. And in many ways, that was really it from that moment. I knew this is where I'm meant to be. I knew that I had come home. I knew that everything that I had understood about myself and the universe and my role in the universe was no longer pertinent, and that there was a whole other way of understanding myself and understanding the universe that was much deeper, but also much truer. It wasn't
Yes.
just about a quantitative scale of depth. It was much more a qualitative distinction of truth and untruth.
Mm.
And I was ecstatic.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was really the beginning of it. And I knew I needed to stay, and I did stay.
Well,
And
that's a
there's
great.
obviously a lot more to the story, but I
Oh,
know
I'm
you have
sure,
a
but
lot of other questions. So I don't want to take up the whole time with
no,
just
no, no. I get it, but we're all, many of us are fortunate to have these profound openings or indicators that we need to go in this direction. For others, it's more subtle. It's just these little things that where we're all similar is that those of us who are attracted to looking for truth are not satisfied with just the trappings of the external world. We know there's got to be more to life than this. But not all of us are fortunate enough to have these type of experiences, yet that we're all pulled in the same direction. And in my experience, actually, grace is operating through everyone all the time. And so many of the reasons we think we do things has absolutely nothing to do with what's obvious. Yeah. Nothing at all. But thank you for sharing that. This is actually the first time in an interview I've actually asked that question, because it seemed pertinent. So in your experience, what is that awareness that we all share? What is the nature of that awareness?
You know, the experience that I had, that I shared with you, was 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. And September will be 25 years. I've lived there. It's amazing to realize it's been so long. But in 25 years, despite how much has crystallized and blossomed and flowered, my ability to semantically describe what I was tapping into, what I was blessed with, has not improved at all.
That's not unusual.
I would, we can throw words at it, and we can throw words at it like infinity or expansiveness or oneness or love or truth. And yet they feel like words that are just sort of swirling around something, like electrons around a nucleus, but not actually getting you much closer to that nucleus. So given that the medium of these conversations is semantic, I'm happy to throw some words at it, but it's important to preface it with the awareness that the words are just that.
Yes, they're pointers at best.
At best. You asked the awareness that we share, and awareness for me is slightly different from the experience that I had on the banks of Ganga and the experience that I have in ecstatic moments. And I'm just trying to think of the best way to explain this semantically.
Sure.
Awareness is there, of course. Awareness is, in my experience, it is unengaged. It is just simply aware. Yeah. And it's an exquisite place to be. It's especially an exquisite place to be in contrast to the way that most of us are so gripped on, with really a death grip on that which is happening in the world around us. Mm-hmm. So whether it's people around us, whether it's a stock market around us, whether it's situations, whether it's our own careers, relationships, bodies, whatever it may be, we've got this death grip on how things should be and how we feel about how things are. So either they are how we want them to be, at which point we are happy and satisfied and right, all of these things that we think we will be, or we are miserable and depressed because the world is not dancing according to our tune, or we are reinvigorated to just push harder
Yes.
to get the universe to dance, as though it were just a matter of strings on a marionette, that if we just yank it hard enough, that leg will come up and the thing will dance.
Yes.
And so awareness is the antithesis of that in many ways, because it's the relinquishing of the death grip. It's the hands that let go of all of it, not in giving up, not in giving in, but simply in the awareness that this isn't actually what I'm here for or the truth of who I am. And so awareness gives us the opportunity. I would say awareness is the field in which we are able to experience the truth of who we are. So it's the field, it's the means, but I wouldn't say it's the end, because in that field something else is happening. And that for me is that divine experience, that divine connection. It requires awareness. When you lose awareness, you lose the possibility of that. And yet it isn't exactly synonymous with awareness. Mm-hmm. So I hope that makes sense.
Yes, no, that's your experience. So it totally makes sense.
And when you say the awareness that we all share, I would go back to that field and I would say what we share is the place in which, the state in which we are not our bodies, we are not our careers, we are not our relationships, we are not the comings and goings of our daily life. We drop back into simply the state of pure awareness.
Yes.
And then in that state of pure awareness, each of us has the opportunity is not the right word. Opportunity implies that we have to do something. Each of us becomes a spaciousness into which grace flows. And so awareness, spaciousness are that boundless container, if that oxymoron works, a container that actually doesn't contain because there are no walls or
boundless, no boundaries
into which and through which and as which grace flows.
Yes. So you said the ultimate is beyond that, or something similar. What were you referring to there?
So I wouldn't use the word beyond, because that has a sense of linearity and a sense of quantitativeness. And then of course you've got people who sit to meditate who want to know what stage they're at.
Right.
And how do I know that I'm getting higher and getting better and progressing? And so I always really do my best to avoid anything that could propel anyone toward this idea that there is somewhere else to go, or
Yes, yes.
something else to happen, or something else to achieve. And so I wouldn't say beyond. What I would say is on a personal level, on a very personal level, when I am fully aware, fully anchored in awareness, fully let go of that which I'm holding on to. So I think about it a lot also in terms of dropping into the ocean. So you could think about like holding on to a dock,
Mm-hmm.
like a boat dock, and you're holding on to it for dear life, and then eventually you let go and you drop. Or like my favorite parable of the man who's holding on to a rope for dear life, and he hears an angel's voice, and the angel's voice says, let go. And he says, I can't let go. I'll plummet to my death. I have to hold on. And she says, well, all right, just let go with one finger. And so her voice is so sweet, and he lets go with one finger. And finger by finger, this angel convinces this man to let go of the rope that he's holding on to for dear life. And finally, he gets to the point where he has only one finger left on the rope. And she says, let go. And now he says, all right, forget it. What are you trying to do? To kill me? I've let go of every other finger. But this one is what's between me and a plummet to my death. But as so many of us have experienced, when we listen to what we call our intuition or our higher voice or a divine voice or whatever words we may use, there's a power there. And so he hears this angel again say, let go. And he does. And he doesn't fall anywhere. And he's shocked, and he looks down, and he notices that he's actually been standing on solid ground the entire time. And I just love that parable. Yes. Because we hold on with this death grip, thinking that we need to. So going back to the metaphor of holding on to the dock and dropping in. So you're holding on with this death grip because you think you need to.
Right.
And then finally, through a meditative practice, through a yogic practice, through a beautiful decision you make based on something you read or see or hear or discover, you allow yourself to listen to that inner knowing that says, let go. And you drop into that state of pure awareness, dropping into the depths of the ocean or dropping onto the solid ground that you've always been standing on. Mm-hmm. And in that state of pure openness, pure ever expanding spaciousness, I find on a deeply personal level that out of that space, very frequently, ecstasy emerges.
Yes, of course.
And so that's the piece that I was talking about, of yes. Awareness being the field and being the means. And also in many cases, it's also an end.
Yes.
So you shouldn't think about it, people who are listening, as only a means to an end, it also is an end in and of itself.
Yes.
And it can be a spaciousness into which, out of which, through which an ecstasy emerges. You know, in yoga, we have these 8 limbs of yoga that the
Yes.
sage Patanjali gave, right? And the highest limb is samadhi,
Yes.
that union. But it's also translated, I've heard it both translated as the trance of union and the bliss of union, or the
Yes.
ecstasy of union.
Yes.
And I think that's another way of understanding what I'm speaking about.
Yes. Yes. So, but is there actually a difference between the bliss and the awareness?
Is there a difference between bliss and the awareness of bliss, or
No,
just
not the
general
awareness
awareness?
of bliss, just awareness.
Just awareness.
Awareness of implies two.
There is a difference. There is a difference. For me, bliss is a state.
Yes.
For me, at least, I would love to reach a state in life in which it no longer is a state, that it
Yes.
just is my existence,
Yes.
24/7, sleeping, waking. But at the moment, bliss is still a state. It
Yes.
comes
And goes. Yeah.
and then it goes, and that's, we sit and we and we anchor and we do all of these things to create the field in which bliss arises. And so for me, it's a state, whereas awareness, you could think about it as the ocean and waves. So awareness would be the ocean, and bliss would be the wave, that of course isn't different from ocean. You look at it under a microscope, the wave is ocean. There's nothing different about it.
Yes.
And yet, for the being who is aware, for the being who is in the ocean, being in a state of awareness, in a state of floating in the ocean, compared to being in a tsunami, there is a felt sense difference. Even though on the corest molecular level it is the same, it feels different to float on your back and drift in awareness in the ocean as being caught up in that tsunami. Now, of course, in the bliss, in the ecstasy, in the love, the teaching is not to get pulled by that and to just stay in awareness. This is where in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says so beautifully, the yogi is the one who is the same,
right,
in pleasure and pain, in success and failure. And we can extrapolate in ecstatic divine bliss as well.
Yes.
Meaning that even in that state of samadhi, of ecstasy, ultimately, we are not supposed to get, pulled into the wave and to just stay anchored in awareness.
Yes.
And yet, the bliss is so beautiful.
Right.
And so enticing.
Yes.
On every level, that it still feels very much like a beautiful, grace-filled wave on an ocean of awareness.
Yes. Yes. But ultimately, isn't both the ocean and the waves just water?
Of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. But let me give you an example about this. In the Hindu tradition, there's 2 main lineages. Obviously, within them, there's hundreds, but 2 main ones. One is the path of what's referred to as Advaita,
Yes.
Advaita Vedanta, that there is nothing but God.
Yes.
Nothing but God. And then you've got your path that's referred to either as a path of dualism or as a path of devotion, the Bhakti Marg, the path of devotion.
Yes.
And those are lovers of God,
Yes.
who sing to God, pray to God, dance with God, meditate upon God. Now, do the lovers of God not know that ultimately they are one with God? Of course they do, especially the enlightened beings.
Yes.
They know. And yet there is this very conscious, very willing, in Stanford, in a fiction writing class, I had a professor speak about the willing suspension of disbelief.
Yes.
And this is the willing suspension of what I know to be true. And so it's the opposite, but I love the expression still. It's a willing suspension of the truth that I know, which is I am one with God, because being in love feels so good. And two coming back into one feels so good, and feels a lot different than just meditating upon the presence of divinity within oneself.
Yes.
And so there's this whole beautiful lineage. And again, within them, so many lineages that are anchored in this willing suspension of what I know, which is all is God, because I love to worship God in this very particular form, with this particular name, in these particular ways. And that coming closer to God feels so good. But in order to do that, I have to temporarily suspend the awareness that we are one in order to begin from a place of separation, so that I can consciously, willingly come back together in love. So with your question about, isn't it all one? Yes, absolutely. And the divine ecstasy of uniting that which never was separate, the two that never were two becoming one, is so exquisite and so ecstatic that there's entire spiritual lineages predicated upon it.
Yes. No, definitely. Definitely. It's interesting for me, there's not two in that that ecstasy that you're describing, to me, is just the ecstasy of being. And there's profound love in that as well, as in heart with the two lineages that you're talking about sometimes are misconstrued as one is more heart and one is more head. But in my experience, you can't have one without the other.
Absolutely.
They totally complement each other. If you just have wisdom, which is the path of awareness, or the path of the oneness path, where you just stay as awareness. If you have that without heart, it can seem dry and empty. And if you have bhakti without the wisdom of knowing that you are worshiping yourself, then you're forever in the worship and not in the completion. So the two are completely harmonious, supportive, an extension of each other. There, in me, there's not two paths, there's one path.
I think when you say it like that, we're saying the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yes.
Big surprise.
when you bring in the qualities of love and of bliss,
yes,
into the state of awareness,
yes,
then absolutely we're talking about exactly the same thing.
yes, yes. That's not such a shock.
Yeah.
So you obviously work with people and you support them in their self-discovery. So what are some of the things or something that you do with people to help them in this path, in this self-discovery? What is some tips or some guidelines or that you can offer to people?
There's a very beautiful meditation. You know, you touched upon this idea of the head and the heart in different aspects. And I have found that the head is the easiest place for most people to start, especially people who are struggling. When we are rooted in the heart, there tends to be, even if there isn't much wisdom there tends to be less struggle. Mm-hmm. Whereas when we're anchored in the head, there tends to be more of a struggle. And so I usually try to begin in the head with simply the awareness that your body has changed so many times throughout your life. Everything you identify as I has changed innumerable times.
Yes.
Every cell of your being has changed. Every relationship has changed. Everything is in a constant state of flux. What is it then that is constant? What is that sense of I that has stayed constant and consistent as every cell of your body has regenerated? As your life has gone from being a 2-year-old sitting in a high chair, throwing peas on the floor to, watch mom dance and pick them up, to you today, without any sense of breakage. Who's that I? And just putting it out there as kind of an intellectual question for people to ruminate upon for a moment. And there's a very beautiful meditation that I really love to take people on, and I'll just describe it here.
How long is it? Something that you can give people a taste of, or is it?
Sure.
Why don't you describe it and then give people a little taste of it? I think that'd be nice.
We'll do them together then. So
perfect.
Yeah. So just close your eyes wherever you are. Having that question that I had just put out sort of gently percolating in your awareness of who is that I that has stayed constant. And then allow yourself to acknowledge what I say. When you do it on your own, you will say it yourself. For now, I will say it for you, but don't just listen. Allow that to actually go within and acknowledge it as truth for yourself. And so we begin by saying, I am not the clothes that I'm wearing. We, of course, know that's true because we keep changing our clothes. We could get naked and not lose any sense of self. So I'm not the clothes that I'm wearing. I'm not the skin beneath my clothes. We've all been sunburned and had our skin peel. We don't lose sense of self. Most of us have used a loofah or a pumice stone at some point in our life to slough off dry skin. We don't lose our sense of self as our skin sloughs off. So I'm not the skin. I'm not the blood that runs beneath my skin. We donate blood without losing a sense of self. We get blood transfusions. And of course, the blood cells keep regenerating, constantly regenerating. So I'm not my blood. I'm not my organs. We could have an organ transplant. People donate kidneys, they get kidneys. Liver transplant, so many different things go wrong with organs. We lose organs, we have a gallbladder removed. I'm not the organs. Don't lose my sense of self in that. And again, even if I keep all my organs, the cells of them regenerate. Every 7-8 years, I've got brand new cells of my organs. So I'm not the organs. I'm not the chemical and electrical patterns in my brain that we call thoughts or emotions. It's just chemistry and electricity. We know that they are constantly changing. We know that we can manipulate that chemistry by drinking alcohol, taking drugs. It changes our chemistry, it changes our thoughts, it changes our emotions. So that's not who I am if something as simple as a pill or a glass of alcohol changes the chemistry. Well, I'm not my chemistry. I'm not the electricity barreling down the axons of my neurons. Which means that I'm not any of the repercussions of those. Not the thought forms, not the emotions. And of course, another way of realizing that is that in between thoughts, I don't cease to exist. When I'm able to anchor myself just in pure awareness, I don't disappear. But if I were my thoughts, then I would cease to exist when I stop thinking. And then, of course, who would have the next thought? So I'm not the thoughts, I'm not the emotions. I'm not the electricity. I'm not the chemistry. I'm not my memories or my history, because all of that is stored chemically and electrically. It's the same chemicals and electricity that store my history that create my identity. And again, we know this because when you're drunk or on drugs, you identify differently. We also know this because when you get brain damage and your memory changes, your personality changes, your identity changes. But all that's happened is the chemistry and the electricity of the cells of the brain have changed. But I don't exist there. And as we peel back the layers one by one, whatever else may be arising in your mind that you think you might be, realize you are not, because it changes. And then we are left in a place that the Buddhists tend to refer to as nothingness. The Hindus tend to refer to as everythingness. But it's that same place of just self. And that's a practice that I would recommend doing as frequently as you can. It's called Neti Neti. Not this, not this.
Yes.
And by the practice of knowing what I am not and peeling back the layers of what I'm not, we create that space for what I am to just be. It doesn't arise, it isn't created. It's not that it comes in from the cold.
Right. Thank you. That's a beautiful practice. I didn't realize it was pronounced that way. I always called it Neti Neti, but I like the way you say it better. So that's a beautiful thing to leave people with. Can you, you have a new book, and can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes, it's very exciting because the book is the medium through which I offer to the world the fullness of the plot of how I came to India, what it was like, the experiences that I had had in the first 25 years of my life that had led me to feeling challenged, stressed, struggling in a lot of ways that I know a lot of people are very, very familiar with. The incredible plot of being in India and what it was like being a 25-year-old American woman suddenly having these types of spiritual experiences, what it was like becoming a disciple, what it was like becoming a teacher, a leader, what service is about, what does it mean to really serve, and why is that such a core and transformative spiritual practice. Mm. So it's all of that really fun, fascinating, interesting, really funny at times plot. But along with that, interwoven through that, the field in which you could say the plot exists is of grace and of transformation and of spiritual connection, and to be able to offer to people the possibility for them. And of course, when I say possibility, I don't mean that it's possible that grace will be there. I mean, it's possible that you will show up, because grace is there for everyone.
Yes.
And for me, the core message of the book is that grace doesn't discriminate. Grace doesn't care what's happened to you or what you've done.
Right.
Doesn't care what challenges you've been through or how you've dealt with those challenges, skillfully or unskillfully. Grace is there. And all of that, which I've experienced in a very, very fascinating and fun and funny stories on the banks of Ganga in an ashram in the Himalayas, is available for you in your life, wherever you're based, in whatever your karmic package may be. Because as awareness is one, truth is one, and grace is one. And so I'm very, very excited for people to recognize in my story themselves, not of course in the plot of being in India probably, but in terms of the struggles and the challenges that both afflicted me pre-India, as well as that were still in my mind and in my life. I mean, I'm a celibate renunciant. Well, okay, what's it like to be celibate? And what do you do when human feelings and emotions and struggles come into a path of renunciation? And of course, these sorts of experiences and lessons that I learned are applicable to so much of that we struggle with in life. And so I'm very, very excited to finally actually share the fullness of the story and the fullness of the teachings and the fullness of the invitation that is available for all of us to really step up to the plate of our own lives and open ourselves to grace and to healing and to transformation.
Sounds beautiful. Sounds like a great book. And what's the title of the book?
Yes, of course. It's called Hollywood to the Himalayas, A Journey of Healing and Transformation.
Great. And you can get that wherever books are sold.
You can. You can pre-order it on Amazon. And by the time you're seeing this, it'll probably be available everywhere.
Yes, I'm sure it will be. So this has been wonderful. It's really been great to share this time with you. Thank you for being here. Thank everyone for listening. And I hope we get to do this again soon. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati and the practice of Neti Neti, not this, not that. That's something you can come back to again and again. If you're so moved, please read Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati's new book, From Hollywood to the Himalayas, A Journey of Healing and Transformation. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you have immediate access to future episodes. Please give us a 5-star rating and share it with the people you care about. If you'd like to learn more about my work, my mentor Lester Levinson's work, and the Sedona method, please visit Sedona.com. As you explore our site, you learn the key to lasting happiness, success, peace, and emotional well-being. We have books, courses, events, and plenty of free material to explore. Again, go to Sedona.com. That's SEDONA.com. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Letting Go and the Greatest Secret.